All right, so in this lesson, we're going to discuss factoring trinomials in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. In the first lesson, the a value is always positive 1, but in this lesson, the a value is going to be another number, not positive 1. And what that does is it makes it a little bit trickier to find the factors. So there are methods that have been developed to help us get to the correct answer. So the method that I'm going to share with you, I didn't invent it, but it works really well. So it's called the diamond method. So here's how it works. Let's take a look at this first example. 3x squared plus 16x plus 5. So what you're going to do in the diamond method is you're going to draw an x. Make it large enough because you're going to be filling each section of the x with different pieces of the trinomial. So now, what are we filling? Let's take a look at the top section of our x. Is going to be the product of your a value times your c value. So in this case, that's going to be 3 times 5, which is 15. Now your bottom section of the x is going to be your b value. In this case, that's 16. And on the left and the right, you're going to take a look at this first term, 3x squared, and you're going to write that as the numerator of a fraction, except you're not going to include the exponent of 2. Okay? So on the left, I'm going to write 3x over something, and on the right, 3x over something. I don't know why I just put a number there. I don't know what goes there yet. Okay? Now, how do we find the denominators? We're going to have to look at this product of a times c and our b value. And it's very similar to the first lesson we did on this. So I have to think of two numbers that multiply together to make 15 and add together to make 16. And so that would be 1 and 15. Because 1 times 15 is 15, and 1 plus 15 is 16. And these factors become our denominators. Okay? So I'm going to put a 1 here, and I'm going to put a 15 here. Now, our next step is we need to take each of these two fractions and make sure they're in simplest form. So if I look here, 3x over 1, is that in simplest form? Yes, it is. Now I look at 3x over 15. Is this in simplest form? No, because I can divide 3x and 15 by 3. So 3x divided by 3 is 1x, or just x, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. And so now this is my fraction in simplest form. And what these fractions actually become is each fraction actually becomes your binomial. So this first fraction here, 3x over 1, that's our first binomial, which is 3x, that's going to be my first term, and the 1, that's my second term. And since it's a positive 1, this becomes 3x plus 1. All right? And in my second binomial, my first term is x, and my second term is positive 5, so x plus 5. All right? So let me FOIL this out so you can see how this works. 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times 5, that's 15x. 1 times x, that's x. And 1 times 5 is 5. And when I combine like terms, I get 3x squared plus 16x plus 5. Which is what we started out with. So this is our correct factored solution. All right, let's take a look at the next example here. We have 10q squared minus 9q plus 2. So step 1, we're going to draw our x. The top here, we're going to put the product of our a value times our c value. So here, 10 times 2, that's 20. And in the bottom section, we're going to put our b value, which is negative 9. Okay? And on the left and the right, we're going to make fractions with our first term. And again, remember, you don't need the exponent. So I'm going to have here 10q over something. And on the right-hand side, 10q over something. Okay? So our denominators come from, we need to think of two numbers that multiply together to make 20 and add together to make negative 9. So very obviously, both of these numbers are going to be negative because negative times negative is positive and negative plus negative is negative, right? So what are two numbers that multiply together to make positive 20 and add together to make negative 9? And that would be negative 4 times negative 5. Negative 4 times negative 5 is positive 20, and negative 4 plus negative 5 is negative 9. So I'm going to put my negative 4 here, and I'm going to put my negative 5 here. And let's simplify our fractions. 10q and negative 4, both of these can be divided by 2. So 10q divided by 2, that's 5q. And negative 4 divided by 2, that's negative 2. So now this fraction is in simplest form. And over here, 10q and negative 5 can be divided by 5. So 10q divided by 5, that's 2q. And negative 5 divided by positive 5, that's negative 1. And now this fraction is in simplest form. And again, we take each fraction and turn them into our binomials. So my first binomial, my first term is 5q, and my second term is negative 2. And my second binomial, my first term is 2q, and my second term is negative 1. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to FOIL that out. If you want to pause and FOIL it to check it, be my guest. Next one, 4w squared plus 4w minus 3. So let's go ahead and draw our x. Top section, we're doing our a value times our c value. So 4 times negative 3, that's negative 12. My bottom section is my b value, so that's positive 4. And my left and right are going to be this first term without the exponent. That's our numerator. So I have here 4w over something and 4w over something. Okay? Now notice that this time the product of AC is a negative number. That means one of these numbers is positive and the other is negative. Which also means when you combine, right, since one is positive and one is negative, the difference between the two numbers is 4. So what are two numbers that multiply together to make 12, but the difference is 4? And that would be 6 times 2. Now, in order for this to be a positive 4, that would have to be positive 6 times negative 2. Because 6 times negative 2, that's negative 12. And 6 plus negative 2 is positive 4. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our 6 here and put our negative 2 here and simplify these fractions. So 4w and 6 can be divided by what? They can be divided by 2. So this makes this 2w over 3. And over here, 4w and negative 2, they can both be divided by 2. So 4w divided by 2 is 2w, and negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. So these are our fractions in simplest form. And these become our binomials. So 2w over 3, that becomes 2w, and that's a positive 3, so plus 3. And 2w over negative 1 becomes 2w minus 1. All right, next example. Now this one is a little different. All right, notice how in this one my a value is negative. Now we don't want our a value to be negative. So the way we're going to take care of this negative a value is we're going to factor out a negative 1. We're going to divide the entire trinomial by negative 1. So that is going to look like this. We go negative 1 times. Basically, we're changing the sign, right? So a negative 2x squared divided by negative 1 is positive 2x squared. Negative 13x divided by negative 1 is positive 13x. And negative 6 divided by negative 1 is positive 6. Okay? And the rest is going to be the same. We're going to draw our x. Up here, we're going to put our a times c, and that's going to be from our new factored version, not from up here. So this is positive 2 times positive 6 is 12. In the bottom, we're going to put our b value, which is 13. And on the left and the right, our first term without the exponent. So we have here 2x over something and 2x over something. And so now let's find our denominators. So two numbers that multiply together to make 12 and add together to make 13. And that would be 1 times 12, because 1 times 12 is 12, and 1 plus 12 is 13. So I'm going to put my 1 here, and I'm going to put my 12 here. And let's make sure these fractions are in simplest form. 2x over 1, that's already in simplest form. And 2x over 12, 2x and 12 can be divided by 2. So 2x divided by 2 is x, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. And now this fraction is in simplest form. Now the rest of this is the same, except remember that there's a negative 1 out here, so we can't get rid of that. So that's just going to go right out here. Negative 1. And my first binomial is 2x over positive 1. So that's 2x plus 1. And my second binomial is x over positive 6. So that's x plus 6. And this is my solution. All right? Negative 1 times 2x plus 1 times x plus 6. Okay. So here's my last different example. Here I have, let's take a very close look at these terms. I have 12p squared plus 20p minus 8. Now, if you look at each of these coefficients, my a value, my b value, and my c value, you might notice that all three of these can be divided by 4. And so, when you can divide all three terms by something other than 1, you need to do that to simplify your trinomial. So I'm going to divide all three of these terms by 4. So that means the 4 is going to come out here. And let's divide. 12p squared divided by 4, that's going to be 3p squared. 20p divided by 4, that is going to be 5p. And negative 8 divided by 4, that's going to be negative 2. And from here, we're going to follow the same process. Here's our x. Top section here, a times c. Remember from our new factored version, so 3 times negative 2, that's a negative 6. My bottom section here, our b value, so that's positive 5. And then here we're going to put 3p squared, so I'm going to write 3p over something and 3p over something. So let's take a look here. Two numbers that multiply together to make negative 6 and combine to make positive 5. So again, since this is a negative 6, that means one of these numbers is positive and the other number is negative. And since my b value is positive, the bigger number needs to be positive. So what are two numbers that multiply together to make negative 6? When you add them together, you get positive 5. Well, that would be positive 6 times negative 1. Positive 6 times negative 1, that's negative 6. And 6 plus negative 1 is positive 5. So that's what we have here. So I'm going to put my 6 here, and I'm going to put my negative 1 here. And again, we need to simplify our fractions. So 3p over 6, what can I divide both of these by? I can divide them by 3. So 3p divided by 3 is p, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. And here's my fraction in simplest form. And over here, 3p and negative 1, that can't be simplified, so this is already in simplest form. So I have here, I can't forget this 4. So I'm going to need to bring down this 4. And then here are my two binomials. My first binomial is p plus 2. And my second binomial is 3p minus 1. Let me go ahead and FOIL this one out so you can see how it works. Okay, so 4 times p times 3p is 3p squared. P times negative 1 is negative 1p. 2 times 3p is 6p. And 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. When I combine like terms, I get 3p squared plus 5p minus 2. And then when I distribute this 4 times 3p squared, that's 12p squared. 4 times 5p, that's 20p. And 4 times negative 2, that's negative 8. All right, so let's see if you understand the concept. I encourage you to pause the video, work on these 4 problems, and then come back and see if you got them correct. All right. So we have 3d squared plus 23d plus 14. So here's my x. My top value is a times c, which is 3 times 4 is 42. My bottom value is 23. This is my b value. And then on the left, I'm going to have 3d over something, and on the right, 3d over something. All right, so 2 numbers that multiply together to make 42 and add together to make 23. So if I think about 42, half of 42 is 21, and 21 times 2 is 42, and 21 plus 2 is 23. So these are my denominators. It's going to be 3d over 2 and 3d over 21. Because 21 times 2 is 42, and 21 plus 2 is 23. Now 3d over 2, that's already in simplest form. And 3d over 21, each of these can be divided by 3. So this becomes d over 7. Okay? And this becomes, my first binomial is going to be 3d plus 2. And my second binomial, d plus 7. All right. Number 7. 2k squared minus 13k minus 24. Let's go ahead and put our x here. My top value is my a times c, so 2 times negative 24 is negative 48. My bottom value is my b value, so that's negative 13. And 2k squared, so each fraction is going to be 2k over something. All right, so 2 numbers that multiply together to make negative 48 and add together to make negative 13. So the numbers are negative 16 times 3, because 16 times 3 is 48. And since my b value is negative, my bigger number needs to be the negative. So negative 16 times 3, or 3 times negative 16. So I'm going to put my 3 here and my negative 16 here. And simplify. This is 2k over 3 is already in simplest form. And over here, 2k and negative 16 can be divided by 2, making this k over negative 8. And that's in simplest form. So my first binomial is 2k plus 3. And my second binomial is k minus 8. All right. Last 2 examples. This one. All right. Notice how my a value is negative, and I don't want that. So first thing I want to do is I want to factor out a negative 1. So I'm going to go negative 1. So this becomes he squared minus 14g plus 3, as I factor out a negative 1. And I'm going to put my x. Okay, so my AC is 8 times 3, that's 24. My B value, that's negative 14. And then I have here 8g over something times 8g over something. Okay, so 2 numbers that multiply together to make positive 24, but add together to make negative 14. And that would be negative 2 times negative 12. Negative 2 times negative 12 is positive 24. And negative 2 plus negative 12 is negative 14. So this is going to be a negative 2. And this is going to be negative 12. Now 8g and negative 2 can be divided by 2, making this a 4g over negative 1. And over here, 8g over negative 12. Both of these can be divided by 4, making this a 2g over negative 3. So these are going to be my binomials. Now remember, I can't ignore this negative 1. Okay? So I have here negative 1 times, and my first binomial is going to be 4g minus 1. And my second binomial is going to be 2g minus 3. All right, last one. Okay? Number 9. So we have here 8v squared plus 34v minus 30. If I look at all three of these terms, they're all even, which means I can factor out a 2. So it's going to be 2 times, all right? So 8v squared divided by 2, that's going to be 4v squared. 34v divided by 2, that's going to be 17v. And negative 30 divided by 2, that's going to be negative 15. Let me move this over. No need for it to be so far. All right, let's make our x. All right, a times c, 4 times negative 15 is negative 60. My b value is 17. And I have here 4v, so 4v equals, 4v over something, and 4v over something. So, now, two numbers that multiply together to make negative 60, and when I combine them, I get positive 17. Well, if I think about that, if I do a 20 times negative 3, well, 20 times negative 3, that's negative 60, and 20 minus 3 is 17. So that works out perfectly. So I'm going to put my negative 3, I'm going to put my 20 here, and my negative 3 here. So 4v over 20, both of those can be divided by 4, giving me v over 5. And over here, 4v over negative 3, that can't be simplified. So that's my other binomial. So my solution, remember we can't forget about this 2, so 2 times, my first binomial is v plus 5, times, my second binomial is 4v minus 3.